Okay, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. So my apologies for those. I'm so behind on putting up recordings, things like that. Inshallah, things are going to be a bit more streamlined, but that's just where we are right now. So I'm just kind of behind. I'm pretty sure I didn't upload last week, so my apologies for those who are waiting for it. So basically last week we spoke about this key concept of what is civilization and how civilization would naturally, right, create like schools of thought, right? So again, ask AI to like create a planet and create a religion. It's naturally going to do that. Like within 3 seconds, you're going to have different sects of a religion, different ways of looking at a religion, and over time there will be immature versions of those different sects and mature ones and levels of self-criticism and this kind of things. And you're going to have this it's just a normal natural production of of human activity. It's just how it works, right? It's just how it works. So it's just a function that you just repeat and it will do the same thing in whatever human activity you have. Unless there's certain limiting factors like destruction of society or I don't know, huge drastic changes or something like that, right? That's just how things are. So basically having a madhab is exactly what you would expect and is exactly what the Prophet taught, and that's what the Salaf created, as we spoke of last week. The other thing we'll talk about today and other things is the concept of the legacy of critical thinking. So a major problem is translating the word madhab as sect versus school. So a school of thought versus a sect. What's the difference? So I'm gonna look up artistic schools of thought.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
think, Sheikh, historically, from what I thought, can everyone hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, I think that historically, um, when we talk about sectarian, even we're talking about groups who often pit themselves against each other
Mm-hmm.
to see that us versus them somehow that what makes me unique makes me better than this other group. But
Okay.
schools of thought will respectfully disagree, but still agree on in principle on the main things.
Okay. So here I'm looking on the schools of thought of art. Okay, I don't know anything about art. Okay, and it has here, for example, modernism, postmodernism, contemporary art, postmodernism, late modernism, avant-garde art, art manifesto, visual critics. So you could imagine right now, like even this, like any design that we're going to look at fits the design of your phone, the design of your house, design of things. It fits a certain school of thought of architecture. Is that true?
Yeah.
Right. That's true, right?
Yes.
Management styles, right? I'm sure if you were in corporate America, which let's say is functioning, right? Let's say it's functioning, assume it's functioning, and then go corporate China. Is it the same?
Yeah.
No.
No.
So they have different schools of how we do management, how we do business, lots of different things, right? But really, really different way that human resources, all sorts of things are really, really different, right? Food, right? Like one Arab, he said, yeah, I went to China and like I couldn't eat anything. It's not about halal, haram. It's just like I just don't even understand like how is this food? You know, like so a system of how me and him, we are both humans. We both need the same kind of proteins and fats and carbohydrates, but how we absorb that, put it into our body is very, very different. Totally different, like the style of what it is, right? What's actually even happening, right? And so these are schools of thought, how you do things, right? And it becomes advanced over time, right? Versus sectarian. Sect, what does that mean? We say insect, bisect. What does that mean?
Cut off.
It means to cut something off, right? A
Mm.
section of something, right? So it's called an insect because it's like it has these, different pieces in its body, right? It looks like it's almost like, it's like disjointed, like this thing happened coming, it's like things coming off, right? So bisect something to cut it in half. So a sectarian is the idea that I'm different to you, right? And then what's going to happen is this: he's gonna preach his sectarian views and try and indoctrinate other people, right? If you touch your wife, it breaks wudu. Make sure you tell everybody, right? Those people over there are weird. They don't say that. So then I tell my son that, his son tells that, and this is sect. Okay, this is our belief. So that's one way of looking at madhab, which is a sectarian view. I'm different to you, and I'm going to promote these ideas and indoctrinate people with my same sectarian views, as opposed to a school of art, which will naturally turn into various branching off schools of art in that thing. A school of the way that a physical school, right? The whatever school of economics. Are you going to come out with exactly the same ideas as your lecturer? No. But what is it? The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? You're going to have similar ideas, right? So Imam Shafi is very similar to Imam Malik, but he's not Imam Malik. Imam Nawawi is very similar to Imam Shafi, but he's not Imam Nawawi. So that you come from a school. So there's a fundamental difference in that there is critical thinking. And as we mentioned last week, that fiqh, which is understanding, is the antithesis of taqlid. It's the opposite. So if you literally did indoctrination, like all I'm going to get you to do is just chant a mantra, right? Chant the mantra, the integrals of, and that's also how it's seen, right? So you imagine you're coming from France, you're coming from England in the 19th or 18th century, and you go and see, oh, in a madrasa, what do these kids do? They chant. Oh yeah, that's what we used to do, right? Remember in Catholic Church, we used to chant, the catechism, whatever, and like you chant things and just rote memorization. Yeah, that's before the Enlightenment. That's before like people started thinking. Now it's about critical thinking. So our exposure as Muslims, I went to madrasa and they had us memorize Quran. Somebody saw a madrasa and they just repeat things. We might observe it on a face value as there's no critical thinking. It's just indoctrination, right? But that's not the reality of it. It's not the reality of it, right? That's when you get into it, that's not what's happening at all. Nobody stops thinking. Okay, nobody stops thinking. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. And unfortunately, many Muslims have this idea. So there was a teacher I was working with, and her son did the IB curriculum, right? International Baccalaureate. So part of the IB is that you have to do the theory of knowledge, the TK class, right? And I thought that's epic, right? I was like, that is so cool. You actually have what's called usul al-fiqh of the way that you see knowledge. Right? That's a really cool thing to do for a kid in high school. And in fact, some of these things even can count as um, what's it called, undergrad credit, is like you're not just going to discuss geography, you're also going to have a whole class discussing the philosophy of how I should think about the humanities, which is great, right? Philosophy of the humanities. I remember I did a class in that, right, in University of Jordan in undergrad, but that's really cool as a high school student, right? That you're teaching your kids chemistry, biology, geography, history, language arts, whatever it is. But at the same time, you're saying, let's think about how we know what we know. That's a really good thing to do. And who does that? Us Muslims. Go and walk into a madrasa. Go and walk into a madrasa, any madrasa, right? From Egypt to all the way to, I don't know about Morocco, but from Egypt all the way to, I don't know, to Indonesia. Go into madrasa, and they're gonna have this classic text that everybody studies.
Me.
1 second, guys. Someone's got their microphone on. So you're gonna walk into this madrasa, and the beginning of their course is going to be the following, right? The text will say, العلم بها حقائق الأشياء ثابتة والعلم بها محقق, right? They're going to say the course will begin things actually have realities, and knowledge of the realities of things is realizable. So then they'll talk about how I know what I know. That's how the course begins. How I know what I know. How does a hadith class begin? How I know what I know. What is the definition of a reliable hadith? How I know what I know. We start ulum al-Quran. What is the definition of Quran? How I know what I know. That's what we all talk about all the time, right? In grammar, we have what is the basis of grammar? What kind of research could I do to find out, and what kind of proofs could I find out to find out whether what is grammatically correct and incorrect in pre-classical Arabic? That's what we do in the world of Islamic studies. Usul al-fiqh, what is a proof? What is knowledge? What is confidence? What is doubt? That's where we begin. They'll say, for example, in theology, when we are supposed to be dogmatically brainwashing our children to believe what their parents believe, we tell them you can't believe until you think, right? Wujub an-nazar. You have to think. You have to say, does God exist? You actually have to question before you can know that God exists, right? This is the curriculum that's there. Go out and see the madrasa. This is what we do, right? But yet we have this idea that no, the ummah doesn't think. Muslims don't think. Thinking is bad, right? And so the mother, for example, of this the student who's doing the IB, she was worried, like, oh, it's making my son think. That's not good. Like, don't. It talks about religion. Yeah, don't think about religion. That's not good. You're supposed to just accept it, right? That is not how the Islamic tradition is at all. Okay, it's not how it is at all. That's different. Bani Israel didn't over question. Bani Israel was stubborn. There's a difference. There's a big difference. So, for example, how do I know God exists? I don't know. Well, here's a proof. Yeah, but I want to see Allah. You're stubborn now. Slaughter a cow. What kind of cow? Like, the only reason you ask that question is you don't want to do it, right? Hey, I asked my son, Mikhail, can you go and get my phone from upstairs? Like, which phone? I was like, oh, my iPhone. Which room? And I'm like, I don't know, somewhere upstairs. Yeah, but upstairs or downstairs? I said upstairs already. So he's engaging this conversation because he doesn't want to do it. That's totally different, as opposed to how do I know what I know? So with Islam, you will never ask a question without an answer. I say that hands down. Right? What, hand over my heart, how to phrase it? Not hands down, hands down without effort. So in a legacy of critical thinking. So Ibn Qutayba ad-Dinuri, okay? He is a 3rd century scholar he's a fiqh, he's a scholar of hadith and scholar of Arabic literature, right? Huge scholar of Arabic literature and Arabic language. So he has a book where he wrote, it's called A Correction of the Errors of Abu Ubaid. So there was a scholar called Abu Ubaid. He wrote a book on difficult words in hadiths, words that normal Arabs, if you read the hadith, you wouldn't understand that word, okay? And he made certain errors. So Ibn Qutayba said, okay, I'm going to dedicate a book to the errors made by Abu Ubaid. And Ibn Qutayba is a giant, but his introduction is epic, right? He spoke about the freedom of thought and the difference between how we think in things as academic and not as ad hominem arguments. What is an ad hominem argument?
An insult?
It could be an insult, right? You would say, of course you would say that. You're like, oh, Israel, they're doing this. Of course you would say that. You're Palestinian, right? That's an ad hominem argument. Like, I'm not looking at whether the statement is true, and I'm just saying because you're good like that. But ad hominem, to do with the person, homin, the person themselves. So it's true because he said it. Imam Shafi said it, therefore it's true, right? So That's not a sound way of thinking, right? Attacking a person, not the argument, or basing the argument on the person instead of the argument itself, right? Which we don't do. That's the key concept, which we don't do. So criticism, therefore, is welcome, and we are criticizing. That's what we do all the time. So he said, every scholar's views, right, are up for discussion and debate. Every scholar's views, and he's not saying, "Oh my God, that's crazy." He's like, "No, that's how we roll, right? That's how the Islamic tradition works. Every scholar's views are up for debate, discussion, and debate." Ash-Shafi'i, for example, refuted the opinions of Ath-Thawri and of the Kufans, and even opinions of his own teacher Malik ibn Anas. Right? He wasn't rude. He wasn't this. Like, yeah, that's what he did. We have never heard of Allah Almighty, and he goes on for a whole list. Like he mentions like 20 people. Like every authority has critiqued some other authorities. That's totally normal, right? So-and-so critiqued Al-Farra, critiqued Kisa'i, so-and-so critiqued so-and-so. Imam Muhammad critiques Imam Abu Hanifa. That's all the time. That's just normal. That's how it works, right? We have never heard of Allah Almighty and Majestic ever making any mortal human infallible or immune to error. That doesn't exist. Nor have we ever heard of him favoring a particular group of people with knowledge over another. Like there's one group, only this group knows things. Nor has he made any particular era in history a time of knowledge and not another. Right? It's not like, oh, that was because they were in those times. That's not an argument. Oh, that's because they were Salaf. You can't be a Mujtahid Imam because you're not of that era. He said, nor has he made one particular era in history a time of knowledge and not another. Rather, he has made knowledge something shared among his slaves, the lesser correcting the greater, the later reviving the knowledge by critiquing the words of the earlier, right? Written with gold. The later reviving the knowledge by critiquing the words of the earlier. Building and not destructing. But building does not mean following. So there's following, I'm going to do exactly the same thing as my teacher did, as opposed to building what my teacher did. Right? So a madhab, this is what a madhab is made of. This culture that we just did here, this is what a madhab is made out of. Right? He has made it incumbent upon us, upon those who know something, to state it and promote it. You can't just say out of humility, I can't say that. That's wrong. That's haram to do that. If there's something that's illogical in an argument, that's it. So go and look at Usul al-Fiqh, right? Here's all these books to my left on Usul al-Fiqh written by Shafi'is. How many times do they quote Imam Shafi? Like very little. Very, very little. Like Imam Shafi's book on Usul al-Fiqh basically died out, like, I don't know, 200-300 years after him. Like basically everybody outdid him. So he is the cornerstone of Usul al-Fiqh, but everybody just built on him. So then he became almost insignificant. Not because he was wrong, but because they what? The later reviving knowledge by critiquing the words of the earlier. Maybe he was 98% correct. So then someone who's 99% correct is now going to tweak that. And somebody who is 99.5% correct is now going to tweak that. That's how it is. Right? That's just how it is. He has made it incumbent upon those who know something to state it and promote it. You can't, as a scholar, you can't remain silent. You can't just say, it's true because my teacher says it's true. That is haram. You cannot do that. Right? As a student, I don't know what's right and wrong. It just sounds funny, that's all. Right? So you can't say, oh, I had to object to my teacher. No, you had the right to remain silent because you don't understand the picture, Habibi. You don't understand. But when you do understand, you now have the obligation to be vocal. Right? And this is an obligation. It's not you don't have the luxury of remaining silent. Right? So a madhab is a school of thought, not a set of answers. Right? What does tamadhub mean? Abiding by set, tried, and tested, sophisticated research methods. Oh, right? So anybody today, for example, you come along and you're doing your master's in I don't know, in engineering, you are not going to have your own research methods. You are not going to have your own approach to the ethics and morality and goals of of what engineering is, you're going to set someone. Your college slash the academic community will have set, tried and tested, sophisticated research methods, and you might vary from here to here, slightly different, but it's basically set. Such that now, when you prove yourself, I have some new information to provide to society, they listen to you. Now you can go along and say, you know what? I'm going to tweak the set and tried and tested sophisticated things. I'm going to tweak them a little bit, but you're not going to come from zero. That's not true of Farhan. So Farhan, the first textbook that you would have studied, right? Imagine you are in Egypt or in wherever you are. You go and study the Shafi school. The first textbook you ever study in Shafi fiqh says, this is a summary of what Imam Shafi'i said, but I don't follow him 100%. And he told me not to follow him 100%. So there was never a time ever when anybody absolutely agreed with Imam Shafi'i. Never. Because agreeing, so even was it Qafal al-Shashi, right? He was from Tashkent in Uzbekistan. He said this. He said, we don't follow Imam Shafi. We agree with him. There's a difference, right? So I do what you do because you're right and I'm wrong, as opposed to I agree with you independently, right? So they will either independently agree or disagree. Does that make sense? Right? So I show you this is how you should go from Birmingham to Leicester, right? There's two roads, go this way. And you look at the map, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. That's not called taqleed, right? So even though you go my same way, you follow the same thing, you're not actually taqleed, right? So Imam al-Muzani, throughout the textbook that you're studying, the very first time, right, that you're studying a textbook in Shafi fiqh, Imam Muzani keeps putting a footnote, I disagree. Footnote, I disagree. Footnote, I disagree. Right? Now, why does he have a right to do that? Because he is an initiate, meaning he's been trained in the system. Somebody who doesn't understand anything, free dingle, who's like, I disagree, you're not an initiate yet. Yeah, yes, but Sister Olive, BC, it's usually do you use the word Aisha or do you use the word Allah BC? Both. Can I just call you Aisha because it's difficult for me to pronounce? Yeah, okay. So Sister Aisha, so here's the difference. Farid Dingle is objecting to Imam Nawawi. Farid Dingle, you can go and hang yourself, Habibi. I don't really care who you are. Why? Because you are not an initiate. You're just on your yellow belt in karate. You're not that good. You're just on a certain level. As opposed to, you're on the same level now. You come and ask me anything, I can explain. I can explain this, everything, right? And I know what's going on. And the community of scholars in that field, they've all acknowledged me as being on that level. So now I can object. It's fine. But the issue is if you're not trained and you're not then so a lot of people what they do is they jump the gun. They just basically see something, it sounds weird, and they just object to it. Right? So if someone like myself, for example, you say, Fareed, do you think if a man goes and touches his wife, do you think it breaks wudu? Like, I honestly don't think that's true. But I acknowledge that my opinion is worth zero. So I have no right to come along and put footnote. Sheikh Fareed Dingle, Sheikh al-Islam of Malaysia / California says the following. Unfortunately, many people will do that. So they deem themselves a Muzani. They put themselves on the level of Imam Nawawi or the level of Imam Muzani and treat them on that level, but they're not on that level at all. And the community would not accept them. Like, you're not on that level. What are you talking about? You just what's the word? A charlatan, right? So there's lots of charlatans who are like, they're just you're kind of familiar with Shafi fiqh, but you don't understand Shafi fiqh. And your footnotes are not useful, right? That's like saying, for example, I don't know anything about design, and I'm like, I don't like I don't like the what's it called? I don't like the new iPhone design. It looks clunky. So Frida, if you worked in like design and stuff like that, you like what's your expertise? Like you have no expertise. You don't know anything about design. You don't know about functionality, about electronics, about where art is going, about where the market is going, usability. You don't know anything. It's just mute point. It's like a hot air. It's meaningless. Okay? So objections are not unconditionally welcome. Does that make sense? Objections are welcome from somebody who is your colleague. You have the ashab. They get the picture, right? They get the picture. So Imam, they're what's the they can roll with you. They can do what you're doing, right? I'll give you an example. Like Zakaria Ansari, one of the late Shafi'is, one of his students was Shihab ad-Din Ramli, the father of Shams ad-Din Ramli. And he said, I unconditionally give you the right to change my books. Like anything you see wrong in my books, you can change it and and that's me. Like you are me and I'm you. Right? Like it's a real discussion. Like if you object to me, like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. As opposed to kid, sit down, get a piece of paper and start listening. Does that make sense? So a lot of people, so what we have, for example, in the Salafi movement, they'll say, well, look, Imam Muzani objected to Imam Shafi, why can't I? Because you are not on his level. So join the club, train with us, and go ahead, then object. Does that make sense? So that happened again and again and again and again for thousands of people for over 1,000 years. So you have this lot of critical thinking. Right to my here. This book to my right here is called Asrar al-Ma'ani. All of it is a student hammering the teacher. If you say this, why do you say this? Ah, good point. If you say this, but that doesn't make sense. Explain your inconsistencies, ya Sheikh. Explain this, explain this, explain this. So we don't have a bunch of people sitting there saying, Sheikh, can I please kiss your feet? Sheikh, can I please buy you some more socks? Right? That's not what happened. That's not how it happened. It's critical thinking, right? In all form of their hip. Okay? Make sense? But again, critical thinking, again, think about democracy, right? You go up to somebody and say, who are you voting for? Okay, Trump. Why? Because I'm against LGBTQ plus. You see, is that a real argument to vote for Trump? Like that is the reason why you voted for Trump. Yeah. So what does that mean? There's two problems. Number one, you shouldn't have voted. B, democracy in America isn't real. That's what it means. So the person who should vote in a democratic system is somebody who knows what's going on. Like you actually know what's going on. Otherwise, it's actually meaningless. You're not part of the discussion. You don't know what the discussions are. So therefore, your opinion is actually meaningless. And in reality, it's just a way of manipulating the masses. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. Okay, so making the concludes, did I just invent that word? The conclusions of one body of scholarship, one's default basis. Okay. Making the conclusions of one body of scholarship, one's default basis for legal and moral decisions. So for me and you, I'm not doing research necessarily on certain levels. I am on certain levels, right? But let's say, for example, the non-initiate, you're just new to this game. I don't know how you guys work. So what do? You say, oh, I'm Shafi. So what does it mean to madhab? I'm Shafi, meaning I make the conclusions of one body of scholarship, not an individual, a body of scholarship. So these scholars, their conclusions are my default basis for legal and moral decisions. Default. Not that I'm going to follow in every single thing in my whole life, but it's the default. You say, what madhab are you? I'm Shafi. Okay. So what's your question? Oh, if I did this in ruku, what does it count or not? Okay. So tamadhub to the scholar is abiding by set, tried, and tested, sophisticated research methods, right? I remember I gave this presentation in Dar es Salaam, and I used the word, why, what the heck, right? And everyone's like shocked. I was like, yeah, literally. So if a madhab is abiding by set and tried tested research methods and sophisticated research methods, why the heck, literally, would you come along and say, I don't follow madhab? Because what you're trying to say is, I want to find out what Allah wants me to do based on opposite of set, i.e., disparate, inconsistent, non-tried and tested, very basic research method. That's exactly a Salafi. That's exactly a Salafi. Is you've come along, you said, AI, hey, is there any Sahih hadiths that say Bitcoin is haram? No. Okay, it's haram. Hey, AI, can I sell my kittens? No, you can't. It's haram because the Prophet ﷺ said in Sahih Muslim, can't sell cats. Okay, great. Thank you. So you abided by a not set, like you had random, your research methods are random, right? They're not tried and tested because you're not part of a system because you say, no, 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 we just go back to the Salaf. So it's not tried and tested. And it's not sophisticated at all. Like your system is very, very basic, right? So the usul al-fiqh of a Salafi is like really simple because it's actually it's like primitive and not set, not tried, not tested. It's kind of like silly, right? So literally, why the heck? Heck meaning hell. Like you are treating the religion as a joke because you didn't research it properly. You should use set, tried, and tested sophisticated research methods. Of course. How could you be inconsistent in your research methods? It wouldn't make any sense, would it? How could you use unsophisticated research methods when you could use sophisticated research methods, right? If you could be trained in these research methods, why wouldn't you? Like, what's stopping you? Oh, I just want to have an answer ASAP. Okay, sure. But that's called being irresponsible. That's called not caring. That's called like, I don't really care. But you should care. When you're just trying to find out halal haram, you should abide by set, tried, and tested sophisticated research methods. How do you do that? You study a madhab. So there is no fiqh outside of a madhab. It doesn't exist. So you say, why do you follow the four madhahib? Because there's nothing outside of the four madhahib. It doesn't exist. There isn't any large body of clear legal and moral answers outside any of the four madhahib. It doesn't exist. There's no set and tried, tested, sophisticated research methods outside of the four madhahib. Simple as that. So that's why you find, like Ibn Qutaybah, for example, okay, which madhab did he follow? In the 3rd century, he's like kind of Shafi-esque, basically. His son was Maliki. Like by that time, it's like you can't really be taken seriously if you are not trained in one of these places, you know? Because you're like, if you weren't trained in the Maliki school, and you weren't trained in the Shafi school, you weren't trained in the Hanbali school, the Hanafi school, like how do you know anything? How do I even know that you have set, tried, tested, sophisticated research methods? How do I even know that you have this collection of body of scholarship? Like it's kind of like, right? So you become it's survival of the fittest. You become the weakest. Like you're not that amazing. So you just die basically and become insignificant. And everybody, meaning the state, meaning the judge, meaning society, everyone's going to rely on you because you're better versus somebody who has inconsistent, non-tried and tested, unsophisticated research methods. That's what it's going to be like. You know, they're not going to consider you a faqih because you don't really know what you're doing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Resistance to the madhabs is hubris. Exactly. That's exactly what it is, right? But then if I change the word madhab to sectarianism, like yeah, resistance to sectarianism is good. So again, it's what it is you sell a madhab as a sect, done. Like this is basically just copy and paste indoctrination. Nobody's thinking. It's not necessarily true. You're just trying to divide the ummah. It's like, of course, right? Of course, right? Resistance to madhahib, to sectarianism, yeah, of course, is great. But resistance to madhab, that's just dumb. That's just good. Why? And it's like, so why has nobody ever done that for the last 1,000 years? For obvious reasons, right? Yeah, but even Ibn Hazm, he was Zahiri. At least he's also in a school. So here's a problem, Musa, okay? I was in the Haram, okay, in Mecca, and there's a Mufti sitting there reading the Muhalla of Ibn Hazm. And he's there, right? So if I was sitting there, if you saw me in the Haram as a Mufti, I'd be sitting there with Bushra Karim. I have Bushra. I know you're going to come and ask me about Hajj. I'm going to have Bushra Kareem open. I'm going to have all these late Shafi stuff because I know you're going to come and ask me a question and I need to prepare beforehand. Okay? So he is there with Ibn Hazm, al-Zahiri. So that's a Zahiri school. Are you, scholar, sitting in the haram, are you Zahiri? Yes or no? He says, no, I'm Quran and Sunnah. So i.e. he has no set research methods. Does that make sense? So somebody who says I'll give it like this, for example. You ask this guy, here's a question, here's an example, right? So asking somebody who, which madhab do you follow, is like this. So say, are you heterosexual or homosexual? And he's like, bro, I'm just not like that, bro. It's just not like that. You know, just not like that. So he's like non-binary, right? Or not even non-binary. Like he's like, yeah, it's just not like that. So like, you don't even know where this guy is, right? Just kind of like confused. Or like the cat that thinks he's a dog and keeps like running up and down the street, you know? And it's like, are you a cat or are you a dog? So the cat works in a function, dog works in a function. So what happens if you have half cat, half dog? It's not going to survive. It's not a real system. Okay? So thus what I would expect is like, say I am Hanbali. This is the Hanbali madhab. This is the Hanbali system, right? And I'm gonna, so now when you say something, I'm gonna hold you to these, and that's also you are falsifiable, right? You're falsifiable. You've actually made a statement that's falsifiable. The Shafi school says X. Is that true or not? I don't know. So now I can hold you to a standard. I can hold you to a conclusion or hold you to a research method, right? So for example, Mustafa Zarqa, right, a big Hanafi scholar of the 19th century, 20th century, sorry. He said, based on Hanafi usul and Hanafi qawaid, insurance is a halal contract. This is it's not a problem. It is not vague. It is not anything. It is halal. So then he's a Hanafi following a Hanafi system. Now the Hanafis can now talk to him meaningfully. You followed this system. Is that right or wrong? And they disagreed with him. But at least he's following a system. It's meaningful, right? I'm teaching karate to my kids, and I'm like, this is how you stand. And someone's like, that's not a proper standing. So no, I'm Shokokai, not Shotokan. Like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Our stance is different. Shokokai karate is like different Shotokan karate. At least now I have some kind of reference point, right? And then they're like, yeah, but that's not really Shokokai. So yeah, actually, I'm like fourth dan Shokokai karate. So like, I have my own system. Like, oh, cool. Okay, I get you. But the thing is, you're not fourth dan. You're blue belt. So the blue belt has now reinvented his own martial art. Dude, what are you talking about? It's not a thing. So would it be, how would you be able to, do you explain how there are so many differences between madhabs, but they are all considered different? Because so the Salaf, they disagreed. The Salaf, the Prophet ﷺ accepted more than one understanding of the deen, and the early Muslims had more than one understanding of the deen. So the issue is not which is correct. It's the issue is which one is, is it systematic or not? Right? So it doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter, but it doesn't matter that you died under the knife under the being operated on. What matters is, did the doctors do their job properly? That's what matters. Is he a real doctor? Was he following normal procedure? Is that what you should have done? Yes. Okay. Khalas, you signed the contract. You died under the knife. Khalas. Alhamdulillah, that's it. As opposed to, and as opposed to, what's it called? This is not a real doctor. He was not following proper procedure. The nurse was not supposed to be there. The nurse had been working for 15 hours. That's too long. It's not safe. So the procedure wasn't there. We're not interested in the actual conclusion. We're interested in the procedure. And what I'm trying to say is there is a procedure of multiple thousands of scholars all following a particular set system, and so their conclusion is going to be solid, as opposed to one or two scholars who have an opinion and is not based on any set methodology, and it's just crazy. So Salafi approach, me reading the Quran, reading the Hadith, here's my conclusion. One person or two people, no set standards, no scholarly precedent, no, you're not part of any organization. No, there's no accountability because it's just my interpretation of Quran and Sunnah versus madhab, which is I'm Shafi'i. This is the Shafi'i answers. These are the Shafi'i research methods. Here's my conclusion. It's right or wrong. There's accountability, and you know that it is valid, even if it's not necessarily correct. Does that make sense, Sister Zainab? Valid versus correct. Correct? Allah knows best in Judgment Day, which is correct. That's irrelevant, though. What's valid? How come we consider the Salafis to be kind of Hanbali? Because they've hijacked the Hanbali school, but they're not Hanbali. There's a fundamental difference between Hanbalis and Salafis when it comes to Aqidah, when it comes to fiqh, when it comes to Tasawwuf. They are very different. Right? It's not the same, but they've been hijacked. That's why. Okay, so erroneous narrative. Oh my God, Imam Shafi's super awesome. He is from Ahl Bayt for crying out loud. He's from Gaza for crying out loud. Like he memorized like a gazillion lines of poetry. He's like super cool. I saw him in a dream. Imam al-Ghazali was Shafi'i. Oh my God, I'm gonna become Shafi'i, right? Imam Shafi'i, he knew so much that like he had like photographic memory, like he could like hardly read 10 books at the same time. He prayed so much, he did like 1,000 khatams every single second of his life. Okay, that is irrelevant, Habibi. It doesn't matter how great your imam was. It doesn't matter how knowledgeable your imam was. It doesn't matter how religious he was. In fact, scholars don't like religious people, right? Some of the muhaddithin, they say, don't take hadiths from over religious people because they're all like making dhikr all the time and they're not like, you know, what's the phrase? Like they're not on the point, you know, they're kind of like they're too cerebral. Right? Erroneous narrative. Everybody stopped thinking and blindly followed him, even though he didn't know everything and probably made mistakes. Right? Erroneous narrative. Right? I'm right and you're wrong. I'm big and you're small, and there's nothing you can do about it. Hey, deal with it. I'm Imam Shafi, you're not. I prayed 50,000 rakahs, you didn't. You got to believe me. Okay? Erroneous narrative. Okay? Erroneous narrative. Right? Okay? Correct narrative. Each madhab started with the companions, so it didn't even begin with Imam Shafi. So it didn't begin. It was always there. Okay? It was never born. It just grew. Okay? So each madhab begins with the Sahaba, continues with the Tabi'een. Okay? The Imam is a pivotal turning point in that narrative. He edited and codified. So he's a key shift from vague to very clear. Before the Imams, it's kind of vague. After the Imams, it's very clear. So they codified, right? They edit out, do we want to go this way or that way? And they codify. Okay? That's the key beginning. Scholars continued the organic, right? It's natural process for the next millennium, building an edifice that can never be outdone. What did they do? Edit, codify, edit, codify, edit, codify. Edit doesn't mean agree. So Imam Abu Hanifa, his madhab begins with Abdullah Mas'ud, but he didn't agree with Abdullah Mas'ud in everything. So he's not really, so do you say madhab, he's editing, he's tweaking, he's agreeing, disagreeing, right? So but that's what happened. Okay, so we have an edifice, right? A huge building that you could never be outdone. So it doesn't, so you're like, yeah, but my sheikh knows more hadith than Imam Shafi. That's not what we're talking about. Does your sheikh know more hadith than all the Shafi'is? No. Does your sheikh spend as much time as all the Shafi'is combined? Like put all those human hours together, does your sheikh spend as much time as he did? No. So your sheikh is 300 years old, right? Where's Yoda from? What planet is he from? Where's my Jedi guys? Come on, Yusuf. You know this. I know, Yusuf.
No,
You know?
not
You do.
that much. I know
Come
the
on, bro.
themes of the movies, but I can't not the
Okay, guys.
details.
Chat. Siri, where's Siri? Siri, come on, guys. Someone ask Siri. What planet when did Luke meet Yoda? Which planet on? Planet.
Dagobah?
How do you pronounce it?
Dagobah, I
Okay,
think.
Dagobah, whatever. Okay, so you have a sheikh that's been sitting there for 300 years on Dagobah, memorizing every single hadith possible and impossible of the whole world, including a bunch of books that are lost. Okay, he's read every single book of fiqh possible and impossible, and he's commentated on all of them. He doesn't know more than the Shafi school. Why? Because you're talking about a thousand years of top-notch scholars, right? In reality, it's a hyperbole. In reality, none of these people who object to these scholars are actually even have an iota of these people, right? They're not on the level. But just for argument's sake, let's make one of those people 10 times any of those individuals in the Shafi school, including the Imam. Like my sheikh that I just met knows 10 times more than Imam Abu Hanifa. Okay, but does he know 10 times more than the Hanafis? No, he doesn't. Right? An elephant takes on 1,000 years, right? You imagine if for 1,000 years you had ants reproducing and never died. What's an elephant going to do against that? Like how many times, Siri, how many times bigger is an elephant than an ant? I don't know. Like ridiculous amount, right? Millions of times bigger. But an elephant, it doesn't matter how many times bigger. It can't take on what 1,000 years of ants can do. Can't. It's not possible. So look at the man hours in the Hanafi school and the Hanbali school and the Shafi school and it's not possible. You can't outdo it. So that's why Ibn Khaldun, the historian, he's like, by the 8th century, he said, 6th, 7th, 8th century, he said, you've got in fiqh, you've got to, well, in the ulum al-shar'iyya, you've done something that can't be outdone. Like it's not possible to outdo these things. Because it's just, there's too many man hours that have been in there. Too many questions, objections, rebuttals, counter rebuttals that happen back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back so many times that you can't bring up a question they haven't already asked about. It's not possible. And it's only because you don't know who they are, right? Al-insanu aduwwu ma yajhaluhu. Man is an enemy of that which he doesn't know. So you're like, what is the madhab? Oh, sectarianism. Of course I can deal with that. Not a big deal, right? How many hadith does Imam Shafi narrate in the Not that many. I know more than that. I can Google more than that, right? So what's the big deal, right? That's their attitude. Whereas you can't actually, so you can't, so if you can't fight them, what's the phrase? Join them, right?
Join him.
That's how it
If you
is.
can't beat him, join him.
If you can't beat them, join them. It's like that. So it's not in a bad sense, in a good sense. Like in reality, you could never ever. You could outdo Imam Ahmad in principle. You're not going to do it though. In principle, you could outdo him, but you can't outdo the Hanbali school. So join them. You could, in principle, beat Imam Malik, but you can't beat the Maliki school. So join them. Make sense? So here's the problem. Imam Shafi is awesome. It actually doesn't matter. That's an argument against it because you're trying to say it's all about Imam Shafi. It is not about Shafi. And I don't remember like very rarely I quote Imam Shafi when I'm giving Shafi answers. Very rarely, extremely rarely. Like it's like once now and then, and that's kind of an Imani point. Like not on a fiqh point, I would never ever quote Imam Shafi ever. Like here I have the Kitab al to my top, to my right, left. I lost the ninth volume because it was pretty cool. I was carrying it around with me. I lost it somewhere. May Allah forgive me. But otherwise, like I've never opened it. Like I don't know. Here's like honestly, like, oh, get volume 6. Have I opened it ever in my life? Probably not ever. Very good. So what about people who say, oh, times have changed and there are new issues today that the Madhab have not covered? Yeah, but it's all there because they're all low level. Let's say, for example, Bitcoin. That's a low level discussion, right? Praying on the moon. I don't know, a bunch of stuff. But the thing is, people don't know. So what will happen is a modern scholar will just jump the gun and assume that they didn't discuss it, but they did. Right? We've already, like 400 years ago, we already discussed surrogate motherhood. 400, yeah, more than 400 years ago. 400 years ago. It's there. Here it is to my right, Shabbat al-Malisi. You can go and see that in Egypt. They discuss surrogate motherhood. Who's the real mother? You did an in vitro, like, the sperm and egg of two people, and you put it inside another woman. Who's the mother? It's already there. A contract on a collapsed economy, a collapsed currency before they even had any other currency before Islam. So we think this is the problem. We think that the Muslims are dumb, but they weren't. We think they don't talk about anything, but they talk about everything. It's just we can't be bothered to get into their world. Does that make sense? So all the systems are there, right? It's not that. So all the homework has been done, and these are low level discussion, not high level discussion. High level discussion, what is the nature of money? Low level discussion, does a Bitcoin count as money? Right, that's a low level discussion. So the discussion they're having today is a low level discussion, not a high level discussion. The high level discussion is already there, just application. That's all. Exactly, because we talk about ilal, right? We talk about ilal. Ilal is the ratio, what I call legalis or whatever it is, right? Don't know how to pronounce it. Like what is the concept? We talk about concepts, right? We're not talking about specifics. Aslan. So somebody opens a book of fiqh, like, dude, somebody has two faces. How do they make wudu? Well, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said this. The discussion is, what is the nature of your body? How do you even look at that, right? I'll give you an example, even just on a low level, right? I asked one of the sheikh, I said, Sheikh, it's makruh to make dhikr in the bathroom, and it's sunnah to make dhikr coming when you leave the bathroom. So what about on the way out? He's like, oh, that's easy. I was like, how? He says, because in the chapter of vows, if you said, by Allah, I will never enter Yusuf Muhsin's house. They say, if you put your foot over the threshold, but you didn't lean forward on your foot, you're not in. So that's on a low level. It's already there, what it means to enter. So they said, basically, if you're leaning on your back foot in the bathroom, but your front foot is out, you're not out of the bathroom yet. Still makruh. So lean forward, and now it's okay. Right? So that was on a low level. That's not a high level. Right? Does that make sense? So this is what we do in fiqh. In fiqh, we don't talk about, like tayammum, we're not talking about tayammum. We're talking about the concept of duress. How does it apply? So we say, for example, what if I made wudu and it made a mark on my face? There's no pain involved, but it leaves a mark on my face. You say, oh, that's excused. So why are you saying that's excused? Oh, because the Sharia values my outward appearance. Like I'm not obliged to like scar my face. So now you come and ask me, this question was put to me the other day, I couldn't answer it. Was this lady, she has a injury on her face, okay? And when she's at work, she puts on like a lot of like not makeup, but like basically corrective makeup. She has lots of injuries on her face, right? It'd be hideous, basically. And so is she excused or not? I'm not on that level to do that. But that level, that's not, it's a low level question. Is she obliged to make wudu? Does she make tayammum? How does it work, etc.? Right? That's a low level question. It's just there on the, you ask somebody and they'll have the answer. Right? It's a low level discussion. So there's lots of low hanging fruit, like it's easy to do that, not a difficult. And then there are some more advanced things here. Does that make sense? So the concept of what a madhab is, it is not the conclusions of an individual. It is a system and meta system of thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of top-notch scholars. Each of those people, you'd be like, dude, like Qadi Hussein, for example. Okay, Qadi Hussein, one of the great Shafi scholars, they said these two friends, they did something they shouldn't do, right? One of them said to the other that his wife would be divorced if Qadi Hussein is not the biggest faqih on the face of the earth. So they're like, dude, you just said that, right? Like you just divorced your wife if Qadi Hussein isn't the biggest faqih on the face of the earth. So then they went to him and said, Sheikh, this is what my friend said. So Sheikh, it's Qadi Hussein, he looked down and he said, she's not divorced. Like the guy's amazing, right? And so this is what you find, right? These people are amazing. Each individual, let alone the collective. So this key idea, the collective, right? look at evolution. Can you outdo it? I'm going to create my own, have my AI do my own digestive system. You can't do that, Habibi. Like how many hours and trial and error to create the digestive system of a rabbit? Like that's a ridiculous amount of time to create the digestive system of a rabbit. All the complex systems that are happening in that digestive, you could never, you could copy it, maybe, but you couldn't outdo it. It's not possible. Okay. So, so here, this is Zarkashi, and in one of the late Shafi scholars, quoting Abu Ali Sabih, in the early scholars, says, "We have not blindly followed a Shafi'i, rather we looked at his proofs and found them stronger than the proofs of others." Right? Zarkashi continues. This is Abu Ishaq al-Isfraini from Iran. Right? Many of our scholars are from Iran. Right? Pre-Shi'i Iran, claim that our colleagues. Right? So this is the issue. Are you trained in the system or are you a charlatan? That's the issue. Are not blind followers of Imam Shafi because they themselves have all the prerequisites of independent legal reasoning, ijtihad. You ask them about hadith, they can write an essay on hadith. You ask about the Arabic language, you ask them about this, you ask them about that, they can explain anything, right? They are only labeled as Shafis because they follow his methodology in legal reasoning. He said that this is the truth, and the late scholars confirmed it, right? It is not taqleed, it is agreeing. A large body of people working in the same framework. Our colleagues have rejected some of Imam Shafi's clear statements due to the fact that they contravene his own principles. So if it's all about the Imam, how could you contradict what he said? Right? So I'm going to, can somebody send a message on the other group, on the Muwatta group? I don't know who's in that class, because I just want to go a little further. Is there anybody here that's in that class? All right, so we can just send a message. That would be a little bit late. So we have tens of thousands of Hanafis and Shafis and Malikis. And I don't just mean somebody who identifies as Maliki, and I mean like a giant, right? A giant in the Maliki school, right? So the correct narrative is we follow the net product because we know how valuable it is while accepting the value of other equally competitive products. So Sheikh Yusuf Muhsin and his own approach to Islamic finance, based on reading Abu Dawood and the verse of the Quran, the net product of him and his brother and his sister and his clan and the whole of Yemen in the 21st century is not the same. The net product doesn't have the same value as the collective answer of the Malikis or the collective answer of the Shafis, whatever it is, right? The net product, right? And there's the history of the school. Khair, inshallah. Make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I drop the mic now? No? I don't even do that. I can't. There's no drop the mic in Zoom, right? There's no. Okay, but it's why am I upset, guys? It's like somebody coming up to their son and saying, "Habibi, I'm your dad." They're like, "Huh?" And they've been brainwashed. Like, I raised you. I woke up in the middle of the night for you. I took you to the bathroom. You threw up all over my face and went into my beard, Habibi. When I took you to school, I did this, I did that. I was working at night so that you can go to a good Islamic school. I did this for you, this for you, this for you, this for you. We have all these things we did together. Remember, we had this little handshake. We had this. And he's like, huh? Who are you? He doesn't know who I am because he's been brainwashed. And it's like, subhanallah. You don't know who I am, do you? No. So that's what it is. It's like, that's what the almost happened. Like brainwashed. Like you have this amazing parent, right? Which is the Torah, the heritage. And you look at it as like dirt. You look at it as like, that's takhalluf. That's like being backward, right? You look at it as nothing, right? No idea what it is. Make sense, guys?
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's quite painful, right? It's a painful thing when you step into it and you see how valuable it is, and then you see people looking at it as like whatever, right? And then you see these people like just I don't know what they're doing, right? Like somebody else, one of the reasons, for example, on my Q&A group, actually the only reason I put references, and I sometimes take ages to find references, is so that I'm always saying I'm quoting this tradition, right? Because somebody else is going to give another answer and he's not quoting any tradition. I have no idea what he's quoting. Right? I quote Quran and Sunnah just to help people understand, not as a dalil. It's not a dalil. It's not a proof for anybody. The dalil is I'm representing the tradition. Right? Here's an answer. I'm representing the tradition. I'm representing the tradition. I keep saying that. It's like it seems insignificant. Like if you look at the post yesterday, oh, Imam Nawawi said this. Like what? Who cares? Like, of course Imam Nawawi said that. It's Shafi school, right? But I'm putting that there so that somebody else can't come along and say, well, look at this other WhatsApp group. He has a million answers. Say, yeah, but no references. So I don't even know where that's coming from. So I waste a lot of time putting references just to make that point that what I'm saying represents this system. It's coming from somewhere, right? Here's this toothpaste, FDA certified. Oh, cool. Yeah. Right. There's a system there, right? FDA certified. Okay, sure. Right. Or USDA, whatever it's called, um, whatever it is, right? It's like, oh, it's been stamped. Oh, okay. Okay, so forgive my anger and passion, but we're in a very painful situation and it wastes a lot of time, right? It wastes a lot of time because you have to go and explain the obvious and you have to deal with silly things, right? Knowledge crisis. Jazakumullah khair, Sheikh Yusuf. Saved by the Yemenis, right? Alhamdulillah. We didn't pick on Aman and Zaid enough, inshallah. This class, inshallah, later on we will.
Inshallah.
Khair, inshallah. So Zaid and Aman, okay, I'm going to turn the recording off for 1 second.